about this guy. He's one of the best statesmen that we've had in the legislature in the state of Tennessee. He and I used to serve together. I think it was 4 years we served together in the House of Representatives, and then the seat came open for that district, and he decided to run for the Senate, and they made a good choice in electing him as senator. And it's a pleasure to serve with you now together in the same district, and glad that we can share Polk County together, and about that much of Bradley County. If you look on the map, it's about as big as my thumbnail in Bradley County, out in Buck's Pocket. You ever heard of Buck's Pocket? Steve knows what Buck's Pocket is. But we share all of one county and part of another county, and it's a pleasure to continue to serve with Art. I think the agenda was just to kind of give you a legislative update, and so we can do that and then take your questions. I have found through the years, I've been there 9 years, and usually when I go to a meeting like this, I talk about things that no one's interested in, so I give a brief overview and then I open it up for questions and find out what you're interested in. So I'll do that, and Art may want to do the same thing on the Senate side. But first of all, Lynn, if we could get those young ladies who are helping us today to hand out these cards. I think there's enough to go around. What this card is, let me have one of those. What this card is about the Transportation Modernization Act, which I happen to be carrying in the House of Representatives. My counterpart, Senator Massey, is carrying it in the Senate. She is the chair of the Transportation Committee. I chair the one in the House. But the Transportation Modernization Act is, well, it's going to change the way we do business in Tennessee as far as trying to take care of our infrastructure in the future for generations to come. A little background first on how we got here with this Transportation Act. Back in, by the way, Lowell Russell is a great colleague. I want to mention Lowell as well. And maybe later he might want to say a word or two. But he serves on the Transportation Committee with me in the House. And he also chairs, what subcommittee? Civil Justice Subcommittee. And he's a former highway patrolman, so he knows about that stuff. But the Transportation Modernization Act came about because after we looked at where we are in Tennessee, going back to 1923, which if my math is correct, that's 100 years ago, we had 244 miles of paved roads in the state. That seems unbelievable, doesn't it? Everything else is dirt and gravel. 244 miles of paved roads just 100 years ago. And so Governor Austin Peay was governor at that time, and he realized that we had to find a way to have a revenue stream to expand our infrastructure, because without good infrastructure you can't grow economically, and you have to create more opportunities. So he asked the legislature in 1923 to pass a 2-cent per gallon gas tax. For every gas a gallon that they bought in 23, it was 2 cents. And that particular gas tax revenue stream has been dedicated to TDOT for infrastructure for 100 years. And it has served us well, because now we have more than 96,000 miles of paved roads. We have 1,200 miles of interstates. We have more than 20,000 bridges, all funded, maintained, and built by the gas tax. Well, funny things happen as time rolls on. Technology changes. In this case, we have something called electric vehicles. The feds have mandated that all vehicles get better gas mileage. They've passed a mandate that by the year, I think 2050, there has to be a 60% increase in gas mileage in combustion engines. So what's happened to the gas tax is the gas tax has stayed the same, but people are using less gas because of the fuel efficiency. And plus the growth in our population. We're the fastest growing state in the nation. More people are discovering Tennessee, unfortunately, and they're moving here because we are lowest tax per capita in the country. We are the best fiscally managed state in the country. That's not me saying that. That's Wall Street, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, all these people say we're the best fiscally managed state in the country. We pay for our roads as we go. We don't borrow money as we go to build our roads. So the gas tax has served us well until about 10 years ago. We began to see a decline. This year, we are $4 million down over last year in the revenue stream that funds TDOTs to build your infrastructure, build your roads that you drive on. So the handwriting's on the wall. We have to find another way to fund our infrastructure. And so that's what the Transportation Modernization Act does. And what the proposal is to do what we're doing without raising the gas tax, because it's dying. There's no need of raising the gas tax. It will always be around. It'll be a part of the supplemental funding, probably forever. But we've got to find an additional revenue stream. So what the Transportation Modernization Act does is create a Transportation Modernization Act fund, and the bill puts $3 billion out of the general fund just set aside, separate from the transportation TDOT budget. And it also allocates $300 million, $3.3 billion total, but $300 million is set aside for the state share fund for counties, county roads. And I think Roy's pretty excited about that. He's pretty happy. He was in my office Cornell a week or two ago. But what that amounts to, we've always had the state share fund for counties. And small counties like Polk and Meigs, they don't have the tax base, especially in Polk County because of the Forest Service. They don't have the tax base to fund their own roads. They just don't have it. So we have the state share fund that's funded by the legislature because counties are an extension of the state. We create the counties. The state legislature has created the counties. So they're an extension of the state, and the counties do a lot of work for the state. They register our cars. They give out marriage licenses. They do all kinds of things for the state as an extension. Plus, they take care of more than 60% of our roads in the state of Tennessee. So we felt like it was a good idea if we funded them a little better than we've been doing. And so what this does is put $300 million in one lump sum into the state aid fund. What that amounts to is 15 years of funding at one time into the state aid fund. We normally fund it to the tune of about $29 million per year, and they draw that down through a grant process, and they're able to take care of your county roads. So $3.3 billion is the initial fund. Plus, it also creates the ability for TDOT to use different methods to build our roads, our infrastructure. Believe it or not, TDOT is restricted on what type of methods they can use and how many. So we're removing that cap and boosting it up considerably to use different methods. A good example would be if you build a house, you tell the contractor to build me a house and pour the foundation, you're not going to tell him how to dig that footing. You're not going to tell him, well, you got to use a shovel. He's going to use the best method possible, like an excavator, because it's quicker and more efficient, and it saves you money. So what we're doing is allowing TDOT to use the best tools available to build the roads that you and I drive on, and it's going to help us. And hopefully the goal is to reduce the time frame. The average time frame historically over the last 90 years has been, it takes about 15 years for TDOT to finish a project. That's just not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. And one reason for that is because the federal government has so many rules, guidelines, and regulations that it's difficult. First of all, you've got to pass the EPA test. You've got to go through the environment qualifications. Then you've got to do a case study, and is it going to hurt the snail darter, this type of thing. And then we have to do the site plans, the engineering plans, and that takes about, on an average, 11 years. It takes 4 years to build it. So, but average, it takes 15 years from start to finish. So we're hoping to reduce that down from 15 to 5 years. through this, what's called an alternative build process. So that's kind of what we're doing with that. That's one of the big initiatives. This bill has passed the House Transportation Committee. It's passed the Government Operations Oversight Committee. It heads to Finance this coming week. We hope to have it on the floor of the House for a full vote, I think the last week in March, and fully expect it to pass. And it looks like it's on track to pass the Senate also. So it's a good thing for Tennessee. What I like about it is it's a good thing for future generations, for my children and my grandchildren. And we don't want to saddle them with debt in our infrastructure. There are two things that help economies grow in states: education and infrastructure. If you don't have a good education system that trains future workers, you're not going to attract industry. If you don't have infrastructure for them to get their product to market, you're not going to attract industry and business. So we're addressing those two things. We've already spent $11 billion in the last 10 years in education, over and above what we normally spend for education. So we've invested heavily in education, and we'll continue to do so. There's another one, I think $150 million this year in education, which includes a sizable raise for teachers, which they really deserve. And now we're going to focus on investing in infrastructure and make sure that we're set for the future. So that's a thumbnail of this bill, and hope you're interested in that because it's going to impact you. And now I'll turn it back over to Art and see if you have some update for me.
It'd be hard to add anything to what you just said. You did it so well. And the chairman does an extremely good job, and everybody's envious of you all having him as your legislator. I can't touch him in his knowledge of particularly highways and situations across this state. He educates himself on everything that comes up and down the street. But it's a pleasure to serve with you, and I think it's probably good to open up for some questions here. Bo, you want to make some remarks here first?
Thank you, Art, and thank you, Dan. You've got some great legislators here with Senator Swan and Representative Howell. Representative Howell is the chairman, of course, of the transportation that I actually sit on his committee, and both of these gentlemen inspire me to be a better representative than what I'll ever be, is because of what they do and what they do for you all. As Dan said, I had spent most of my career as a state trooper, law enforcement officer. Unfortunately, in 2012, I was hit by a tractor trailer and ended up getting all fused up from my skull to C4. So I went to the doctor and they said I couldn't go back to work anymore as a trooper. So I started looking for another way to serve and ended up running for office after this seat came available, and was fortunate enough to get elected in 2018. And it's been a blessing ever since to be able to represent the Monroe County and Loudoun County folks, and I truly appreciate that. Appreciate being here with each and every one of you all. I never thought I'd be an elected official, because growing up, I'd always hear stories about politicians, so it made me nervous about putting my name on the ballot. In fact, some of y'all know the Gipper. I'm not going to spoil who the Gipper is, but I'll tell you a story that he once told. He said that a politician and a preacher, they passed away at the same time, and they arrived at the pearly gates, and St. Peter was there. And St. Peter says, I need to check in the book of life and see if you can get in heaven. And so St. Peter looks at the book of life and he says, well, congratulations, you both get in. And they walk up the street of gold and they stop at this house, and it's just like an average size house that we find here on earth. And he says, congratulations, Mr. Preacher, this is your house. And then they walk on up to the next house up there, and it's a big old mansion on the hill. And he says, congratulations, Mr. Politician, this is your house. The politician was looking at him, scratching his head. Well, I don't understand. This preacher got an average-sized house, what we'd consider average size on earth, and here I am with a mansion. And he said, that's right. He says, when you're here, you'll learn that we got lots of preachers, but you're the first politician that's made it in. So being on the ballot was pretty nervous for me, but I've been fortunate enough to get elected, and hopefully that I served well down there. I try to do my best each and every day. I tell people that I can make you 2 promises. I'll always work as hard as I can for you, and I'll never take this job for granted. Now, Tennessee, I'll tell you, just to give you a little update, we're doing really good. As they mentioned before, we're the lowest tax state in the nation, lowest debt per capita in the nation, balanced $52 billion budget, all while maintaining a AAA bond rating, while Washington, D.C.'s got 40-year high inflation, record high gas prices, no balanced budget, crime's running rampant across the country, and that's the difference between bad leadership and good leadership. We're very fortunate enough to have the elected leaders we got in Tennessee, and that's because of those people that came before me. It's not because I did it, because I was a state representative. I've not been here but 5 years. It's because of Senator Swan and Dan Howe, Speaker Sexton, Lieutenant Governor McNally. That's why Tennessee's doing well. Big responsibility I got, not to screw it up. So, and I promise you I'll do my best not to do that. But what I've done since I've been there, I've been fortunate enough to work with these guys. And we passed school safety that gave $500 million to equipment, school resource officers, and mental health for K through 12 students. We passed permitless carry, where all law-abiding citizens can carry a firearm in the state of Tennessee. We passed truth in sentencing, where we put criminals behind bars for horrific crimes that they commit. The most violent criminals have to serve 100% of their sentence. We passed legislation that expanded broadband across Tennessee and provided telehealth so you can visit your doctors from home, work, or wherever you got access to a phone or internet. We banned critical race theory from being taught in our schools across Tennessee. We gave $519 million in new road funding. We've given $5 million to volunteer firefighters, $2 million to rescue squads. Now this next one, I thought about not telling you about this because some of y'all are going to get worked up about it. So we passed legislation that puts 100 new state troopers on the road. Now, I spent 14 years as a state trooper, and I have met some of y'all and seen some of y'all drive, so hopefully it don't get y'all worked up too much on that one. $15 million for new voting machines with voter-verified audit trail, all while cutting taxes. In fact, last year, in the last 4 years, we've cut taxes with over $300 million, and that's since I've been here. So I appreciate being here with y'all this morning. If I could ever help you, feel free to call, email me, Facebook me, but I appreciate each and every one of y'all, and we'll stand here for questions. Thank you.
Surely somebody has some questions, Lynn. What do you think?
Who's going to go first?
I've never known Polk Countyans to be shy. While they're thinking about, everyone, go ahead.
Any ideas on what we're going to use the $300 million for Polk County for transportation? Any ideas on?
Well, let me clarify that. It's $300 million in the state, goes into the state aid fund. The $300 million then is divided among the 95 counties.
Okay.
So that goes specifically to roads, the roads department in those counties, used by the road department in those counties to maintain their roads.
Okay. So for Polk County, then what are there plans for whatever part we get?
Whatever the road department decides their highest need is, paving, repairing a bridge, building a bridge, paving road A to B. I can think of one right now near me. In my driveway, no. There's a few. Welcome Valley Road, I'm sure that's going to be on the list. Others but that's a local decision. We provide the funding, that's a local decision on what the needs are. Yeah. Yes, Anna.
Are there any discussions, state level, about combating PES?
Tell me what that acronym stands for.
Social credit score, basically.
Yeah, it's a social credit score, and it's for businesses. So, diverse, equity, inclusion.
Oh, diversity? Yes, there has been several bills filed. You may know about that. I sit on transportation and judiciary, so some of those would go through business and industry committees. And I do know that some bills have been filed addressing that to push back against it. I can't, I really, you know, when there's 1,500 bills filed, and you gotta work your way through all of them within 3 months, 4 months, it's hard to know each one. And sometimes we don't see them until we get to build it, which I haven't seen that one yet. But I do know that some bills like that have been filed. What about you, Senator? Do you know?
I'm not aware of it yet.
Okay. We'll try to find out though, Anna. I'll try to find out.
It would be a small business bill.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you the legislature is very business friendly. So if it's going to hurt small business, it probably will die in subcommittee. That's where bad bills go to die, subcommittee. Yes, sir.
What is the equation for the 300 billion for the all counties, the state of Tennessee?
That has been in code for a long, long time. I don't know what but it comes through TDOT. The fund is managed by TDOT, and then the counties apply and draw down those funds, and it has a formula through TDOT, and each county can draw down funds from that for projects. There is like a 2% local match. However, I did confirm that they can do an in-kind match. So like if they want to do the grading on the shoulders or clean out the ditches and prep the area, that would be their 2%. Like for let's say for $100,000 grant, 2% would be $2,000. Is my math right? My wife was a math teacher. I try to do right. But it wouldn't take long to do a local match in in-kind work, $2,000. So the road departments locally can do that, an in-kind match. Yes, sir, Steve.
The private sector bears on the investment cost. Is what part of this new program is, that way this reads. That will tremendously speed things up, but what about the vendor's cost? How are they paid?
You're talking about the choice lanes that's in the infrastructure bill? Yeah. There's about 30 states. In fact, public-private partnerships is nothing new. Bradley County has public-private partnerships. Tyson is a great example of public-private partnerships, and it's working. So public-private partnerships have been 20 years or more as far as infrastructure is concerned. And what the way it works is investors.
This is new for Tennessee.
Totally new for Tennessee as far as infrastructure is concerned. The way it works, let's say, let me make an equation here. You've got $1,000 and you want to invest in Tesla. Well, you invest in the stock market and you expect to get a dividend return on your money. Same thing with these roads. We need this road from point A to point B. The closest example would, let's say, the ridge cut in Chattanooga. The bill mandates that there will not be a reduction in general purpose lanes that we have now. But if the traffic flow is heavy enough, the data shows that more than 30% of the drivers will choose to use the choice lanes, and they'll pay a fee. So they will do the research, enter into a contract with the state of Tennessee, TDOT, and they will fund that choice lane. Usually, the contract usually is an 80-20 match. So let's say that project is $1 billion. So we'll get a $1 billion choice lane that will alleviate traffic and speed up your commute. Probably the average is 35 to 45 minutes. And so we get a $1 billion road for $200 million. So that frees up TDOT's $1.2 billion to invest in rural Tennessee. That's where the governor's focus is.
What about toll roads?
This is not a toll road.
Will there be?
No. In fact, I'm proud to tell you that I we have it in code right now. It was passed by the Democrats back in 2007. They put it in code in Tennessee that TDOT could build toll roads if we wanted to. We've never built one. This bill that I'm carrying takes the ability to build a toll road out of code. So TDOT will not, moving forward, be able to build a toll road in Tennessee, but they can build choice lanes.
There's technology, you know how technology changes. And I went to North Carolina a few weeks ago, got my bill the other day.
Yep.
The toll road I passed on, I didn't even know I was on it.
Every time I go to Florida, I come back and I get a $4.50 bill from Tampa for a toll road. But these are choice lanes. And let me equate it to this. If you fly, I'm sure some of you in here fly. Some of you may be even a member of what's called pre-check. Do any of you, see if you nodding, pre-check. Well, if you can think of pre-check as what a choice lane is. Pre-check, you pay a fee to not have to take your shoes off, not have to empty your pockets, to not have to take off your belt and bypass the congestion and security line and get to your plane quicker. You pay a fee to do that. That's exactly what a choice lane is. You pay a fee to avoid that congested traffic, to avoid the semi-trucks, and to get to your destination. On average, in the choice lane going into Atlanta, it saves 35 to 45 minutes per trip to get downtown. The first year that was opened, it generated $40 million. People were willing to pay. More than 30% of the drivers will pay.
They ain't got away with that though now, how Stover did.
No, it's still a choice. Still a choice. Yes, sir.
Are they gonna be reversible like Atlanta, or they?
More than likely. Again, it depends on the traffic and the topography. You know, everything is up, the engineers have to figure out how to do it, but,
They haven't figured out Atlanta. Every time I go, it's always the wrong direction.
well, they're managed lanes, and it depends on where the majority of the traffic congestion is, and that's how they reverse it. But I can imagine there being one in Nashville, there on 6524, where those three interstates merge. It's a mess.
What about
Chattanooga
Chattanooga?
is another candidate. I don't know where it would be. The engineers will figure that out, but the ridge cut is a mess. Yeah, in that area. I don't mean to monopolize things. If you want to JT.
Yeah, there's some survey crews, some property I own at the intersection of 64
Yes.
and Parksville Road.
I can
What
tell
the
you all
plan
about
is
that.
there?
I can tell you all about that because it's going right in front of where I live in Big Frog. That bridge, you know, we just replaced the bridge over the Ocoee. It's called the Gateway Bridge. You've seen it. The new bridge. That's really pretty. Have you driven it at night? Seen the lights? It's really pretty. That was the first project in the 40-plus projects to go from here to Copper Hill to try to straighten out. They're not going to straighten it out completely, but Highway 64 between here and Ducktown. The next project is from Welcome Valley Road to make it, I believe, it's 3-lane with a turn lane in the middle, all the way to 314. And that bridge is at the end of the bridge that's there just past the Shell station, just before we get to your property. That bridge is due to start being replaced soon. And they will cut down those hills and it'll improve the sight line and it'll be 3-lane all the way to 314.
That's the bridge over Cloud Branch?
I think that's right. Runs into the Ocoee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that they're surveying that, and it's imminent. I think you'll see some construction start on that fairly soon. And I don't know which side they're going to go because they can't close the road, and the bypass is way too far on 314. So they're going to have to create a bypass some way. I don't know if they're going to go on the north side or on the south side, but they'll figure that out.
Can we not do that
Yes.
April through October?
I'm sorry?
Can we not do that April through October?
I hope not. I hope not. They're well aware. Trust me, they are well aware. I had the commissioner here this summer, and we went all the way up to it, all this stuff, stopped, looked at the curves and the dangerous intersections, and he's very well aware of what we're. And there is almost $300 million that is set aside, can't be used for anything except 64 Highway through the gorge. That's all they can use it for. So his comment to me, we've been studying this project now for about 20 years. We got a bunch of studies on the shelf, and every study costs us money. So let's forget the studies and let's start building. So that's why they're doing it. That's why they're doing it, JJ. Yes, ma'am. The electric vehicle fee in the bill, electric vehicles don't use gas, but they use our roads. So in order to make sure that they pay their user fee, just like the combustion engines do, which is what the gas tax is, it's a user fee. They will be, well, they currently pay, when we passed the Improve Act, the registration fee was set at $100. That goes to TDOT. And this bill will increase that until we get to parity with what the average driver of a combustion engine pays. And University of Tennessee did the research for us. The research says that the average driver, and I don't know how many miles that is, I have no idea, but the average driver in Tennessee pays on average $274 per year in gas tax. I was stunned when I heard that number. I thought it would be $800, $900. But no, the average is $274. So what we're looking for is parity with the EVs. The only way we can capture that is through a registration. So we capture that registration when they can buy their tags every year. And it's graduated in, it starts, its next step up is $200, it'll stay at $200, I think, for 2 more years, then it goes to $274, which is parity with what we have now.
Is that state federal?
That's just state. Yeah. And by the way, the division is the same between state and local governments as it is with the gas tax. You know, the gas tax, states, counties get a share of the gas tax from the state. That division will remain the same on the registration. Steve?
The highway, through the lake, through the national forest, I've been concerned about trying to get the jet brakes noise.
Yeah, you and I talked about that.
I saw on the interstate one Chattanooga the other day, they got one right there on the side of the road, it's going down the mountain. They call it something else. But I've seen 3 or 4 signs in Tennessee that talks about no jet braking, no combustion, relays, whatever.
Yeah.
But,
They're on 64, especially in, we're close to where JT's property is.
And I'm just wondering if there's any study going on that.
That'd be TDOT.
TDOT.
I can talk to them about that. Be glad to. Be glad to.
Is there,
I'm monopolizing here. Anybody want to talk?
Dan, is there a website that shows what the plan is for 64?
That's a good question. I don't know. You might log on to tn.gov, go to the TDOT site and see if they have that plan. I have seen it. I've got a copy somewhere. If I find it, I'll
There used to
share it.
be a link on TDOT's page to it. I don't know if it's still there or how accurate it is, but there used to be a link on TDOT's page.
Okay. But if not, I've got a copy somewhere, and I'll get you a copy. Yes, sir.
Question for Senator Swan.
Yeah.
Where is your stance in this transportation bill?
Well, I support it. It makes a lot of sense to me. You know, it's been a bargain in Tennessee for the way we've handled things over all these years. You go to Georgia or Kentucky or any of the adjoining states, you know, they're all envious of us because we don't have any debt to go along with it. Nobody else in this country has handled that any better than we have. We're number 1 in that department. So we can afford to do things that the others can't do. And they're trying to pay for things that they should have paid for at the time they did them, that they got 30-year notes on, they're still stroking, just like you would in your own household if you didn't take care of everything every week and every month of the year. So that's the root of the problem for everybody else. And that puts us in the catbird seat, really, it really does.
In the back.
A couple of things. First, I want to thank y'all for taking time out of your day to come up here and visit with us. Second, I'm kind of a simple guy, but if I pay to cross a bridge or drive in a lane of traffic, to me, that's a toll. It can be called whatever it needs to be called, but to me, it's a toll. With regards to these choice lanes, is there a sunset clause where once that road is paid for, the fees stop being generated? Or does that contract?
I believe there is a.
Get the money forever?
Well, let me give you another caveat to that. It's just like the current roads we have now. Those roads have to be maintained, so there has to be a revenue stream to maintain them. So I don't know if there's a sunset on the fee or not. There is a sunset, I believe, in the bill on the board that's created to oversee these. So, the contract, yeah. And what these are leases. These are not, Tennessee owns roads, always will. Nobody is going to own our roads. No country is going to own our roads. There's been concern voiced that China's going to come and build our roads and give us all kinds of problems. China can't bid on these roads because they're on the U.S. sanctions list. If you're on the U.S. sanctions list, you cannot bid on any work in Tennessee. So we have some great builders in Tennessee. Historically, we see over the last 20 years, the road builders that are located in any particular state that has done this, 70+% of the work is done by local contractors in that state. So it's not something that I'm concerned about because of the way that the bill is structured, and there's all kinds of oversight. It's unbelievable oversight in this to make sure that the bidding is done open and above board, that there is transparency. How's the money being handled? How are the fees being structured? In other words, somebody who's got the lease on the road can't just say, well, I'm going to charge $50 to get for 5. No, you can't do that. You just can't because it's overseen by the state of Tennessee. Let me say how excited I am to see such a large group. I think this is the largest group for a political gathering that I've ever seen in Polk County. And I'm really excited to see that you're interested in what's going on in your county and in your state. Regardless of what you hear in the media and on social media, there are some good people like Lowell and Art who serve in the state legislature who really do it for the reason because they care about this state. And they're not there to get rich. Well, you can't get rich on $26,000 a year, I'll just tell you that. That's what our base pay is. And we do it because we care. We care about our kids, our grandkids, future generations, and we want to continue to serve until, well, in my case, until I feel like the Lord's done with me. Then I'm ready to go home and sit on the riverbank with Beverly. More questions? Yes, sir.
We talked about infrastructure. There's another infrastructure that's important for
Broadband.
rural broadband. Yes, sir. There you go. What is Nashville considering to help
You want to talk about
rural
broadband?
counties?
You want to talk about
A lot's happened. So my number one question when I came into the legislature in 2019, after I was elected in 2018, was about transportation-related issues. Once COVID hit, the most common questions are broadband. In fact, there for a year or two, we put $100 million per year in the budget just to expand broadband across Tennessee. And then I think last year was like $250 million. But we are working to expand broadband all across Tennessee so everybody will have broadband service. But it's going to take time. Tennessee's a big state, almost 7 million people, but we're doing everything we can to fund broadband expansion through Tennessee. Because we can't live without it, pretty much. I've got a few more bills if y'all would like to hear what we had, and then I was going to wait to see what kind of questions we had before I mentioned these. But 1,530 bills have been filed in the House this past year. As of March the 6th, 95 of those bills has passed. Now, keep in mind, even though 1,530 bills has filed, I'd say 25 to 30% of those bills would actually pass. Now, that sounds like a lot, and people are thinking, well, we've got 500, 400 new laws, and while that sounds like that's the case, it's not necessarily true. A bill could be filed just to correct current laws and correct a word in the law. So even though you hear that number and you're thinking new laws, that's not necessarily the case. It could just be corrections or naming and designating bridges, roads, or whatever. And the budget itself is a bill, so keep that in mind, even though that number is 400 or 500. The legislation passed bans on transgender mutilation of children that prohibits minors from undergoing irreversible and harmful medical procedures for the purposes of changing their gender identity. And it's been signed into law by Governor Lee. We passed legislation that protects children from adult entertainment, from being exposed to sexually explicit performances in Tennessee. And that's also been signed by Governor Lee. We passed the Rural Brownfields Investment Act that will clean up 175 former industrial sites called the brown fields across Tennessee where toxic waste was created, the potential for environmental hazard. This is a good thing that's going on in the state that's going to address the third grade retention update. So anybody interested in third graders being retained, on Tuesday, March the 14th, the House K through 12 Education Subcommittee will begin to consider the proposal of this issue. So if you want to watch that online, it's a good thing to tune into to watch. And the goal is, this new law is not to retain students, it is to provide every student with the necessary interventions to improve reading and proficiency as soon as possible. And Dan has already covered the Transportation Modernization Act. One thing that we're going to look in is the abortion trigger law updates, and I encourage you to email all of us really and just let us know what your thoughts are on that, because that's going to be a hot topic coming up. And that House Bill number is 883, and it seeks to clarify the exception to save the life of the mother, and it's scheduled to be heard in the Health Committee on March the 22nd, if anybody would like to view that online. So, but I'll turn it back over to Dan. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I know we've been here a while, and I don't want to belabor the point, so if you're done, we'll let you go. Any more questions? I might just close on this one point, and Art may have something about this. You have heard a lot, I know you have because I get your emails, about the third grade retention law. Anybody familiar with the third grade retention law? Several of you are. We passed that last year. There has been a lot of concern about that law and a lot of misunderstanding about that law, about what it does. There have been, I think the chairman of the Education Committee told me yesterday that there were about 12 bills filed in the House to amend the third grade retention law. All of them say about the same thing, and so they're going to find the best one and try to pass it. Which is to say this: one of the most important things we do in the General Assembly every year, and I think these gentlemen will agree with me, one of the most important things we do every year is kill bad bills. And I've seen some whoppers this time. There's some really bad bills. We need to pass good legislation that helps the people of Tennessee to live free and happy lives, but we don't need more restrictions and people meddling in our lives. So we kill a lot of bad bills, but we try to pass good legislation. But this third grade retention bill, there's some misunderstanding about that. And let me just explain just a little bit, and then we'll let you go. The third grade retention bill is not automatic, and it should have had a different name. It should have had a name like third grade assistance bill or something like that. But people automatically think we're going to keep these third graders that can't read at grade level. We're going to automatically just retain them and put them back in the third grade. No, that's not what the bill says. The bill says if you've got a child who is at the third grade level and they can't read at third grade level, then we're going to help them. The state is going to pay for a tutor. The state's going to pay for a tutor, one-on-one tutor. We're going to send them to summer school and give them a lot of help in the summer school, give them some one-on-one attention in summer school to bring them up. And there's 2 or 3 other things, Art, that it does. But the last resort is retention. That's the last resort, not the first resort. And the reason for that is because if you look at this issue and we've been dealing with it for I've been there 9 years, Art's longer than that. If you look at this from the 30,000-foot level as a legislator, and you realize that year after year after year, we have third graders that can't read, a good percentage of them. Then what do? Well, you try to address it, and you give incentives, and you try to find ways to help them achieve grade level in reading. Because when you're looking at the 30,000-foot view, we can either spend our money here in the third grade to help them read, or we can spend our money on prisons. Because we found that I believe that 60% of the people who are in prison cannot read. So where are you going to spend your money? I'd rather spend it on the kids. And so we have made an attempt to try to bring these kids up to third grade level. Is it a perfect law? No. But we often go back. We pass a law. We often go back after we hear from the grassroots. And we often go back and amend laws to make them better. But the goal is to help these kids learn to read so that they won't end up in prison, that they will be successful and good tax-paying citizens with good paying jobs because they can read. And that's what that law is about. But there does need to be probably some tweaking of that law to help it a little better. And so that's where that is. Do you have anything to add to that? Sorry, you did well. All right, well, good. Well, thanks so much. It's an honor to serve in Polk County. I know.
Certainly is. I look forward to it. I hope you'll call on me. You've got the best House member with the second best right behind me. I've reversed that in Sevier County.
Yeah, he says that different in Sevier.
But thanks for letting me be here today. Look forward to serving.
Thank you for letting us come and talk to you about these things. Thank you, Lynn. This lady is amazing. Thank you, Lynn, for putting this together.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for visiting. We're going to draw out of these cards here in just a minute. They'll mingle around if y'all want to speak to them or anything before they head out.